Hi everybody, and thank you for joining the session on smart specialization, higher education institutions, regional development. We have 3 papers in this session, 3 presentations, so we should have plenty of time for both of the presentations and the discussion. Our first presenter is joining us online, Maria Salomar, who is a PhD research fellow from the University of Lincoln in the UK. Our second speaker is Manuela Sartori from Sicily in Italy, Milan, yes, very good. And the third speaker is Zoran Alexander, who's senior research fellow at the Institute of Economics in Zagreb here. I'm not gonna say more about the session. I'm sure people in the audience are familiar with smart specialization and the issues we will be discussing. I would like to ask the speakers to keep it to absolute maximum of 20 minutes so that we do have time for Q&A. And maybe there will be the opportunity for a bit of wider discussion and reflections at the end of our presentations. I come from the UK, from LSE, where we're very strict with time, so I'm going to be not utterly polite if you go over. So with this introductory remarks, I pass the floor to Maria, who's our first speaker.
Lovely, thank you. I hope you can hear me well. Should I start my video too?
Yes.
Probably my face is huge on the screen, isn't it? So greetings from very dark and rainy and cold Finland. Sorry, I cannot be there, but I'm very happy to share some key findings from my PhD thesis, which I defended about a year and a half ago in University of Lincoln, UK. So today, my presentation is entitled Challenges and Good Practices, a comparative analysis on university engagement through the structural funds programs in the UK, Finland, and Portugal. I hope this works well. I just changed my slide. I hope it works okay. Tell me if you can't see it. So like I mentioned, this is part of my PhD thesis, which was part of a running project, and it was Horizon 2020 funded ITN in 7 countries. So I did my PhD as a part of that project, and I carried out 3 case studies in 3 European countries about how universities deal with structural funds projects. That was quite intriguing. So the data collection took place in 2017 and 2020. So if I only have 20 minutes and we're a bit late, let's go to the business then. So as we all know, and you've probably covered this in the past, yesterday too, so there are quite high expectations towards university engagement in general, not only through different kinds of funding mechanisms, but universities are expected to do a lot to facilitate entrepreneurship, technological transfer, and all this kind of comes down to the university third mission, which is rather loosely defined concept, referring to all sorts of interactions with regional industry and society, also beyond regional boundaries. We do have a set of policies urging universities to do more to contribute to economic and regional development, as we all know, especially RIS3 policies. And of course, national policies have quite important role in kind of setting the scenery and offering different kinds of funding incentives to universities. So all relevant aspects when it comes to university engagement. A little bit about structural funds. So they are, so cohesion policy, when it's transformed into operational structural funds for operational programs, they are key instruments to support local level innovation, also through collaboration with higher education institutions. Of course, businesses and other stakeholders are relevant too, but I focused only on what's going on in the universities. There aren't much similar studies, at least I'm not aware of those. And it's quite hard to assess what's the impact of these sort of activities within universities, but I hope I can give you some insights. So we do know that the structural funds can be quite useful in kind of setting the regional innovation systems, and they can reinforce universities' regional engagement and RDI activities. But usually in previous studies, the role of the implementing organization has not been taken into account. But we do need more these program level evaluations so that we can develop more efficient policies for the future, and also kind of learn more about what kind of interventions and delivery mechanisms can work best. So the next slide is just to kind of give you a brief overview on the whole study. So it was a big mix of cohesion policy, regional policy, smart specialization strategies, and then again, universities in the middle of all that, having their own institutional strategies, missions, visions, and so forth. And then the point was to do something relevant for society. So I always call this my playground, and it's a big playground. The whole study took place in 3 phases. So today, I'm going to mainly focus on the phase 3, which was the final one, in which I draw a typology of university-led structural funds activities. So what kind of activities are currently running in the case universities, and how possibly they could contribute to delivering the university third mission, and how they are aligned with academic core as well as regional priority areas, and what kind of challenges and best practices I was able to identify from these case studies. Very quickly, so I carried out 3 individual case studies, one in the UK, one in Portugal, and one in Finland, and these all are quite new universities, and they are located in maybe a somewhat rural setting, so they're not like core urban areas. And all these institutions have quite strong regional roles since their establishment. And also Aveiro and University of Tampere, which is kind of the host organization for University Consortium of Pori in Finland. It's part of European Consortium of Innovative Universities. So during the data collection, I carried out almost 90 semi-structured interviews, and I was able to cover participation to 43 structural funds projects run by universities. So I spoke with the top management, researchers, and kind of those incubator people who try to stimulate researchers to do more with local companies, and also regional authorities and so forth. Of course, I needed to go through a lot of public information about structural funds projects, but fortunately that's quite available these days. Secondary data is a set of different policy documents, databases, national higher education policies, and so forth. And for the thematic analysis, I used NVivo because the data set was quite big, as you can imagine, after so many interviews. So a little conceptual note about how the university third mission can be understood in different ways. It usually implies to quite many different sorts of economic and societal dimensions of the third mission. So on the more economic side, it's about transfer, knowledge transfer more or less, or through human resources, but we're also talking about intellectual property, such as leading to codified knowledge like patents and copyrights in some cases. Of course, there might be spin-offs and all sorts of contracts with the industry. So a lot of different things can be understood to be part of the university third mission, but also from the societal dimension. So it can be contracts with public bodies, different ways to participate to policy making, of course, involvement in cultural and social life, which is more complicated to define, and then kind of increasing the public understanding of science in general. So all sorts of interactions with surrounding society. Then I might have time to say just a couple of words about the case universities. So first, the University Consortium of Pori in Finland. That was quite unique because it's a network campus of several universities in a more rural area in Finland, which doesn't have their own university. So it kind of like covers that by offering access to university level education. And there are some research activities, and they're very active in structural funds programs. So I think they had quite unique structure to carry out such activities, and they have a specific role to serve their region in various ways. So it was a very good case university to look at. Then University of Lincoln, of course, this is kind of pre-Brexit, as you can imagine when I did the when I selected my case universities. But considering University of Lincoln, they kind of operate in more or less similar setting than the University Consortium of Pori. So it's a bit rural out there, not a central area. It's very new university, established in '96, and it has these 3 campuses. Only one of them is in a city of Lincoln, but Riceholm and Holbeach campuses are located in more rural setting, especially the Holbeach one. It's way out there, so in the middle of nowhere, to be frank. But they cooperate a lot with local businesses, mostly in the agriculture sector. So they were more active in using structural funds compared to the main campus area. And then we have University of Aveiro in Portugal, also very much regionally oriented university, and very much involved with different policy design processes, and very active in structural funds. So this made a nice combo to see what's going on in different parts of Europe. Very briefly, some general characteristics from the findings. So in all countries, it was quite obvious that the strict structural funds guidelines make things a bit complicated from university's perspective. Currently, in none of these universities, the structural funds funded projects were strategically planned or managed, so they remained as quite marginal activity, and they were highly associated with the university third mission on all levels. When I spoke with the researchers, they agreed, and also on the top level. But from the top management's perspective, these sort of activities are not much of interest unless they can directly generate academic results, and this was the case in University of Aveiro, or if they are very large-scale investments to kind of promote key research areas that are relevant for that particular region. And that was something that was going on in Lincoln and Aveiro, so that was quite a positive outcome. However, the whole idea of running structural funds project within the university setting, in the selected case universities, it was based on individual academics' interest to engage with the region. And in sometimes, especially in the Finnish case, the researchers thought that the structural funds are rather easy to to get compared to research funding. So sometimes these sort of funding schemes were kind of just utilized to secure jobs in their research groups. So then their regional commitment to actually make something relevant for the businesses or other stakeholders was somewhat lower. But that was just in few cases, but I wanted to just point this out. I was able to detect 4 different types of structural funds projects from my data set. So the top-down institutional structural funds projects can be very large scale and strategic initiatives, and they are designed in cooperation with regional authorities to respond to the set regional key areas, and they are approved and designed by university management. So in that sense, they can have bigger impact also on the whole university level. And then this was quite obvious in Lincoln and Aveiro, as I mentioned already. So they can entail education activities and kind of tailored trainings, different to kind of promote and provide the needed human capital to local businesses. They can have contracts with industry spin-offs. So we're talking about all different kinds of knowledge transfer activities. Most of the project I dealt with were academic-led structural funds projects. So they varied in scale and scope, and they were quite applied I'd say, but of course there were some research elements also in those projects. So on the ERDF side, they were quite driven by the business partnerships. And then in the case Pori, there were also a few European Social Fund projects, and they were obviously focused on the public service and educational mission. Also, these sorts of projects can contribute to the University to Earth mission in different ways. Especially on the ESF side, it was more about involvement in social and cultural life, and also increasing public understanding of science. And of course, the educational element was there too. Then there were a couple of examples of professional-led structural funds projects. They were about capacity building. So for example, in Aveiro, there were a few projects about increasing the international capacity of the institution, and also some very small scale intellectual property projects. So kind of they wanted to, if they had some potential research project from another program or project, or just without any external funding, they were able to utilize structural funds in the IP costs. So about licensing and so forth. Yes, sorry?
3 minutes.
3 minutes?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, the connection is quite bad. I hope it's not that bad there. Okay, and then finally, in the case of Lincoln, I was able to detect some outsourced structural funds activities. So there was no official partnership, and they were not university-led, but the university delivered something that was kind of tailored, a tailored service to either to business or public sector partner to provide knowledge and or equipment for these different local stakeholders. So that was quite handy. So because that kind of collaboration model took the whole administrative burden away from the university. But then again, the regional partners, mostly actually they were businesses, they were able to get exactly the kind of knowledge transfer from the university that was needed to build on their entrepreneurial activities within the region. Okay, so I guess I have to wrap up quite soon, so I need to skip this part. Just a few key messages. from the whole study. I would like to conclude by saying that there is some unused potential to support universities' third mission activities also through structural funds, which can kind of lead to a win-win situation. Based on my case universities, it was quite obvious that the more remote university units are more able to benefit from these sorts of activities and collaboration. But on the other hand, also in the main university campus areas, the researchers thought that they can find a way to integrate structural funds projects and their results to their teaching and research activities. So there are also potential there. They thought that the smaller scale projects can be good stepping stones towards larger scale research projects. And this is very important, or was an important pointing to me, that the academics still find these sorts of collaborations very meaningful, and they wanted to continue to work with local businesses and other stakeholders. So of course, there's a lot of challenges considering the university or organizations themselves, but also the national higher education and structural funds policies that kind of currently restrict the ways in which universities can deliver these structural funds activities, especially the mismatch of indicators was quite obvious in all countries. Probably I have to just finalize this. There are a lot of future avenues for research, and I hope I will be able to continue with this topic in the future, but there are already some papers published from my thesis. So if anyone's interested, you can read more about this. So thank you very much for your attention.
Very much, Maria. We can take questions from the audience. Please indicate, I think there's a microphone. Okay. Maria, can you see us as well as hear us? Or...
I can see you.
Okay.
Okay. My name is Thomas Wobbel. I'm coming from the Committee of the Regions. I have a question about the mission and the link to smart specialization, because of course each region has to develop this smart specialization strategy, and basically the mission, the third mission of universities, is very much connected to this discovery process. So how would you assess these two universities with regards to their role in the smart specialization process? What does it mean for the university? Are they doing well or not? And so what needs to be changed in the conceptual framework to allow the universities to play a more active role?
Okay, that was actually a lot of questions. So firstly, the universities had a bigger role in the design of the smart specialization strategy in Lincoln and in Aveiro. It was quite difficult to assess this in the case of Pori, because it was kind of a network of many universities, and usually in the policy design processes, they're quite top down in the university level. So only the top management was involved, and then that was quite obvious in all cases. So except in Aveiro, I think the best results came from the activities where individual researchers were involved in the process in some way. And then they kind of, when they were building up the projects, they kind of understood what is needed. So I have colleagues who actually looked at the policy design processes and universities' role in that, so within the same project. So they would be able to respond better. But the more, to be very kind of blunt and frank with this, I think it would be very important to get the right people together. So well, in Lincoln, we saw that when it's only the top people involved in the policy design processes, then when the individual researchers start working with the local stakeholders on the project level, they didn't know the expectations, and the project can be a bit off scope and may not actually deliver what is expected in these strategies. I hope I was able to respond to your question.
And the question from Kira. Are there any other questions?
Hi, my name is Kira Garza-Patiliani. I wanted to ask, so in the UK, there is in higher education policy kind of an increasing emphasis on impact as a name of kind of academic institutions. And I was wondering if that has had an effect on kind of driving variation in your three cases. So how has kind of UK higher education policy created incentives for individuals or institutions to engage more with the region and more with activities that foster their third mission?
The sound was quite bad, so maybe the chair could repeat the question. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now, but I couldn't hear the question very well. So
I think the question was about the direction of travel in the UK, about impact, how academic research is increasingly has to focus on impact. I think actually also at the European level this happens, and whether this affected, particularly in the case of the University of Lincoln, the typologies, the differentiation that you saw across institutions.
Yes, I'd say it had an impact. When I did the study, the REF was taking place, so all the universities in the UK were kind of selecting their key publications and impact case studies. So in Lincoln, when I collected the data, it was quite obvious that the most and the biggest large-scale top-down structural funds project also were displayed as impact case studies in REF. So, and when that was the case, they were also kind of considered to be more favorable activities for the whole university compared to other smaller scale projects. But then again, these that were actually part of REF and created impact case studies for it, they were resulted from those bigger projects that were kind of planned where in a top level. But I would still say that in the implementation, it's not that straightforward. So when the project actually responded to the smart specialization strategy, then they were like more suitable to be part of that framework too.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria. I think we should move on to the next presentation. Let me thank you on behalf of everybody for your presentation. Next speaker is Samara.
Good morning. My name is Maria Sito. I work at CSIL in Milan as an economist. I will try to summarize in 20 minutes the results of our 2 years research project that we carried out together with Prognos over the last 2 years and on behalf of the European Commission. The project was a study about the prioritization approaches adopted by smart specialization strategies up to 2020. And this study led to the formulation of a theory about what we can think is a good and optimal specialization strategy in different kinds of regions. And this is the topic of my presentation. I will have to skip the technical details of the analysis, but the final report and academic papers are available for if you're interested. So I will just focus on the main messages of our study without trying to trivializing too much the work that we have done. So, is it working?
Yes.
So we all know what smart specialization strategy are about and what are the key principles of, that should guide the design of a good S3. In our study, we focused particularly on selectivity. Member states and regions have to select a limited number of priorities in order to concentrate investment on, and on diversification that should build on endogenous capabilities in the regions, while still trying to find unique sources of new competitive advantages for the region. This is the two principles that I'm looking at, that we were looking at. And unfortunately, neither the academic literature nor policy documents provides clear indications about how many priorities a smart specialization strategy should have, and to what extent this diversification strategy, this strategy should be very related, very close to what the regions can already do in terms of technological profile and technological strength, or rather more unrelated to that, more distant to that, in order to explore new possible avenues for innovation and specialization. So the first phase of our study focused on analyzing the prioritization approaches used in the different smart specialization strategies. We collected data for 185 strategy documents that were published up to 2020. And we assessed the degree of selectivity, first of all, of these strategies. We didn't just compute the number of priorities selected in the strategies, but we computed an indicator that we called the thematic bandwidth indicator of for the strategy, that basically compares the number of technological or economical fields selected by the S3 compared to the full set of technological fields that are in principle available. And we found, and you can see it on the first map over there, we found which strategies actually had a broader approach, selecting very different and many types of technological fields, and which strategies instead were more selective. Then we conducted a correspondence analysis and we compared whether the priorities selected were actually in line with the technological profile of the region. And we found which regions actually decided to focus their strategy on their currently existing technological assets, and which regions instead diverged a bit more away from their technological profile, selecting these other different priority areas. But this is descriptive analysis, and in principle, high or low bandwidth or more related or unrelated diversification is not necessarily good sufficient indication of a good specialization strategy per se. The strategy is optimal if the selected priority allows the region to make a technological upgrade, and the diversification approach is appropriate if it's realistic for the region, based on its capabilities and the degree of risk that the region can hopefully take. So, in the second phase of our project, we wanted to answer these two research questions. What determines an optimal bandwidth in the strategies, and under which condition is a strategy of related or unrelated diversification a better option for different kinds of regions? So with this question, we added a normative dimension in the analysis of the prioritization approaches. Okay. And to answer those questions, first of all, we needed a theory about what we can expect to be the ideal or the most appropriate smart specialization strategies in different types of regions. To build this theory, we started from the literature, and we started particularly on the fields of research that is led by Ron Boschma and colleagues, arguing that beneficial smart specialization strategy should be designed according to the technological opportunities that are specific for the different regions. And these technological opportunities can be identified and also measured by intersecting two key indicators, which have also been mentioned in the plenary this morning, which is the regional technological relatedness, meaning the density of the knowledge space, the extent to which the region have very diverse capabilities that enable them to quickly diversify and jump to another related field. And the issue, the dimension of regional complexity, which has to do instead with the degree of sophistication of the technologies in the territory. So we computed this indicator for the regions at the time when the strategy in each region was designed in order to really have a picture of the technological opportunities faced by the region when drafting the strategy. And we conducted some econometric analysis to identify also patterns in the types of regions that are placed in the different quadrants of this chart. We found, for instance, that, as can be expected, regions with high technological relatedness, meaning with a lot of technological capabilities and high technological complexity, are the regions that are defined as most innovative, and also those with higher institutional quality. On the contrary, on the other side of the chart, limited capabilities and lower complexity are generally more typically found in regions that are modest innovator, with low institutional quality and also limited economic diversification. So we built on this analysis about the features and the technological opportunities of the regions to formulate, to make explicit a comprehensive theory about a good specialization strategy for each of these regions. And in doing that, of course, we also consider the literature that discuss pros and cons of more or less selectivity and more or less diversification. So we put everything together to build this comprehensive theoretical framework. I hope you can read, but I can explain you the theory, what we postulated as a theory. So and we have to do it by looking quadrant by quadrant in this chart. So starting from regions with low relatedness, low capabilities, and low technological complexity, the strategy in this region basically should aim to gradually reinforce the existing competencies to avoid locked-in dynamics in this region and try to find some higher value-adding specialization in this region. So to do so, since if you remember from the econometric analysis before, in this region, innovation capabilities are not high and also institutional quality are not very strong, we argue that in this region, a relatively selective strategy is considered preferable, so with a lower thematic bandwidth. And in terms of relatedness, we think that since innovation capabilities are limited, but still you have to find some unrelated targets to move towards to, we argue that some medium high relatedness would be advisable, meaning a too high level of unrelatedness is certainly not good for this region. It would be too risky for them, but so they probably should aim for more a higher level of relatedness in their diversification approach. In the right-hand quadrants of the chart, instead, we have regions with higher, stronger capabilities, with a high level of technological relatedness. In these regions could basically choose whether to be very selective, so have a very selective strategy looking at very specific priorities that they want to further develop, or they can also be more broad in order to explore some new areas of specialization and to allow for more experimentation in their search. The regions in the first quadrant, those are regions that are already specialized in very complex technologies, so they already have consolidated position as compared to others. So for them, in principle, a related diversification strategy is rewarding, feasible, but still they could even decide to go for a more unrelated strategies in order to explore still new areas of technological opportunities. In the second quadrant, instead, since those regions have to make a sort of jump towards more complex technologies, we would argue that in this case, what they should do is to venture into relatively more unrelated diversification, precisely to make this jump and to find new areas of specialization towards more complex technologies. Finally, on the third quadrant over there, you have regions with limited capabilities, but in very complex technology. So they have some niches of specialization, and the smart specialization strategy should aim in this region to build new competencies in multiple technologies. So in these cases, medium level of relatedness would be recommended in our opinion, and higher level of selectivity is more appropriate because according to the econometric analysis, these regions have limited innovation capacity on average, so more selectivity is considered to be a better option for them. So this is the theory, and for each quadrant we defined ranges of possibility in the level of bandwidth and level of relatedness indicators in each strategies. So the next step was to test this theory. Why? How? By comparing the expected level of bandwidth and relatedness that we have included in the theory with the actual levels that we measure by analyzing the sample of smart specialization strategies. So we made this comparison, we computed, as said before, the same thematic bandwidth indicator, and also we computed an indicator on the level of relatedness of the smart specialization strategies, and we compared expectations from the theory with actual levels of selectivity and type of diversification in the region. And this is the result of the testing exercise. In terms of bandwidth, green means that there is a certain share of region that achieve optimal bandwidth, okay, in line with what we expected. Red instead, bandwidth that is significantly higher than expected. We found these regions to be particularly in quadrant 3. If you remember, these regions have lower capabilities and should have aimed for more selectivity because they have also low innovative capabilities. So instead, we found that many of them had a too broad strategy. This is also true for some regions in the first quadrant. We think that this is because those regions have many possible options to choose among because they have a lot of capabilities, and for some reason they were not sufficiently able to select areas of specialization for the future. They actually prefer to have more options, leading to probably too higher thematic bandwidth in these regions. In terms of relatedness instead, what we see is that regions in quadrant 2 on average have a very high degree of relatedness, much higher than what we would have hoped for them. As you remember, these regions have to find new fields of specialization, moving away from their current existing capabilities because they have to build new, more complex technologies. Instead, in their strategies, they selected priorities that are very related to what they can already do. So they give limited room for actual improvement. We think that this strategy were too prudent for this type of regions. On the contrary, again, regions in quadrant 3 had a very opposite approach. They went for a strategy that are very unrelated to what they can do. It's true that they have limited capabilities, but instead of building on building closely related technologies to their existing capabilities, they really went for completely different priority areas for which they don't have capabilities, and this may indicate a too ambitious strategy for this region, too risky for them to be successful. So this is in a nutshell the findings of our study, and overall we found, however, that more than half of the strategy, 61% of the strategy, achieved an appropriate level of selectivity, and half of them select priorities that can be considered to suit well the endogenous capacity in terms of degree of relatedness and diversification. we also carried out a further econometric analysis to understand what characterizes the regions that either had an optimal or a suboptimal strategy. And we found, for instance, that low institutional capacity are generally associated with a too related strategy, meaning too close to their existing capabilities and strength, the quadrant 2 regions, if you remember. And also we developed and measured this indicator of ambitions that compares the level of complexity in the strategy with the level of overall regional complexity, and suggest to what extent the region can actually hope to develop easily more complex technologies. So with this indicator of ambitions, we were able to actually confirm the fact that regions that were too unrelated, strategies that were too unrelated, were also very ambitious as compared to the others, okay? This excessive ambition is one of the main determinants behind these excessively unrelated strategies. So, the analysis was backward looking. We analyzed the prioritization approach up to 2020, but it was done to produce some policy recommendations that are valid for the future, that should guide both the revision of this specialization strategy for the future, but also the internal thinking in the Commission and in the managing authorities about what are the possible factors that can determine good performance or bad performance of these strategies. The policy implications are listed here and are basically very much related to the main findings of our study. So we know that with this study, we can say that higher ambition can be advisable. So this strategy can really be very ambitious and pointing towards unrelated diversification, but only in more developed countries, so that those that can already have capabilities to build on, right institutional capacity too. Instead, we have to pay attention to the less developed member states, less innovative ones, because they tend to be very ambitious in their strategy, but this seems to be associated with too much risk for them. So more prudence there is probably more advisable in order to avoid channeling resources into new cathedrals in the desert, as said there. So more path dependence transformation approach is advisable for certain types of regions, and we should be taken into account. I will conclude here, but just to say another point, another key contribution of this study that I would like to highlight is the theoretical framework itself. Besides the results, this is the first step that we made to try to devise a theory for good smart specialization strategies. It can be improved, but it's the first attempt, and I think this is necessary in order to really think about what can be improved for the future and what factors should be taken into account when designing this sort of strategies. And with this, I will thank you.
Thanks for summarizing what was a lot of work into 10-minute presentation. I will take sales prerogative as you correct your thoughts to ask the first question, if you don't mind. So the relatedness, etc., literature has moved a bit more to patients, because we think about, you know, the sectoral relatedness to tell us only that much, but how you move to different areas could also be about the skills that you can utilize in different economic activities. So I wonder whether that is applicable with occupational data rather than sectoral data, but then how much months industries. The other thing that I wanted to ask is, of course, the first round of smart specialization somehow forgot connectivity, so every region was an island. Yeah, and you have a specialization here and a completely different or completely identical specialization across the border. Now we're moving towards more into cross-border and interregional design, let's say. So I guess that complicates the whole issue a lot, because then you don't know, you add another layer to your question, is kind of what's the geographical scale, or who are the regions you're collaborating. So do you think it is feasible to go back to your work and try to understand it in cross-region, cross-border kind of terms?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, we'll take a few questions. So Laura first.
Well, first of all, congratulations on the study and on the presentation, which was very clear. And as Vasily said, you really managed to concentrate so much in so little space of time. I wanted to ask you one point in relation to your policy recommendation and how you operationalized in particular the concept of institutional capacity. So what did you take into account to define institutional capacity? What do you mean by it effectively? And also in terms of capacity building, yes, it's imperative, I think, to enable good implementation as well as design of smart specialization strategies. But which aspects, again, do you mean should be fostered of capacities of which actors? Is it the public sector? Is it firms? Is it other actors that intervene in the quote-unquote helix that smart specialization should entail? And also whether capacity buildings, if you looked at it, I don't know, should vary, and to what extent in the four quadrants, in the four types of regions. Thank you very much.
You've got another question with Sylvia.
I was going to ask the same question. So what is the right policy mix for the stakeholders come to, how does it fit in terms of administrative capacity? Did you read your administrative capacity building unit? So whatever you're saying is completely falling into the right ears.
Okay, so
yes, you talked about prioritization of smart specialization strategies, but you didn't mention anything about entrepreneurial discovery process. So I think you should, in your theory, you should add this democratic process of smart specialization, because priority is not should be given in advance. So you should in some way include in your theory consideration. There are a lot of references about entrepreneurial discovery process in the last few years, and this is an excellent story. Everything works in your story, but in some way there is no democracy in your, how to say, democratic process which bring output on the entrepreneurial discovery process.
okay, I want to make this a two-round Q&A.
Yes.
So you probably don't.
Okay. I will start from this one and then go back. The EDP process was mentioned at the beginning, and I made explicit that this theory is looking specifically at selectivity and diversification. Why that? Because we had data on EDP process, we collected data on the types of actors that were involved, on the types of procedures that were put in place to involve in a participatory manner, the different stakeholders, and a number of information about the EDP process in itself. But what we found is that when you read the documents, and that was our source of information, basically there was no difference across regions, no big differences across regions in terms of how they interpret the EDP process. They all applied in some way this EDP process properly. So we use this data also to try to include it in our story, but it was not making any kind of difference because there was no kind of heterogeneity in the regions, in the type of, in the way how the EDP process was implemented. So EDP process is not made explicit in the theory, but it's underlying all of them, in fact, but it doesn't really make a difference in terms of in the theoretical framework. So this is why we eventually prefer to just look at those strategic choices that were made by the regions in terms of bandwidth and in terms of diversification approach that in fact we see vary a lot from region to region. So we try to focus on that because of this reason. Then occupational data and the first question that you raised. Yes, all these analysis is based on analysis of technological opportunities that is based on technological capabilities and so patents data. And we look at capabilities measured in terms of, well, with patent data, as is usually done in this kind of literature looking at technological relatedness and complexity. We also had data on employment. And in principle, you can build the product space and use employment data instead to look at relatedness across economic sectors. And part of our analysis on the correspondence analysis that actually look at the data. And employment is actually the only kind of variable that we could use that had a sufficient level of granularity to regions and different asset sectors to conduct the analysis. But we prefer to focus on the technologies because at the end, this is an innovation. These are innovation strategies, so we prefer to look at innovative capabilities, but nothing prevents from estimating this framework and redoing the testing with employment data. So just the paper and the, so we wanted to be focused, but this is in principle possible, and it would add a complementary perspective, I would say, to these results. So something interesting to explore later on. And then you correctly mentioned the fact that now the smart specialization approaches are becoming more and more regional, and so when in the selectivity, in the selection process, we also have to take into account the not only what are your endogenous capabilities, but also your positioning as compared to regions in other countries or in the EU. This is not taken into account in this framework, and so it should be included. It should be. It will probably complicate a little bit the selectivity approach, but yes, and what we found is in general that the selectivity approach works in the past worked very well, especially in smaller regions, not at national level. Those regions were better able to be selective and to find the appropriate priorities for them. We argue that these kind of regions will also facilitate the identification of complementarities and synergies with other regions. So if you keep the strategies at regional level, it will probably more easier at first stage to find the right level of selectivity in the regions, and on the other hand, to find partners and partners for interregional collaboration to work on in order to foster the specialization approach. So this is in part included in our policy recommendation, policy implication, but it will have to be further explored. This approach has started just now, so we will see what comes out of it. And finally, there was a question about, two questions about institutional capacity and the role of all of this in this analysis, in the picture of that I provided. First of all, I wanted to highlight the fact that institutional capacity, regions with lower institutional capacity seem to be better able to be selective, to prioritize, okay? And this was in a previous, okay, it's in the previous slide, but no problem. In these regions probably applied the smart specialization principle fully, more coherently. They for sure they use the EDP process, but they also thanks to technical assistance they received from the JRC, they were actually better able than other regions to be selective. They were forced probably to be selective. And so we found that their lower quality of institution is currently associated with a better selectivity in these regions. Conversely, where institutional capacity matter more is on the relatedness story. There we see actually that lower relatedness is associated with, too high relatedness is associated with lower institutional capabilities. We use the usual concept here, usual measure of institutional quality, which is the usual indicator, which is a complex indicator that it takes into account corruptions and other dimensions related to the development process. What I think is interesting here is that the analysis goes beyond the the usual explanation of policy failures related to institutional capacity by bringing instead this idea of ambition in the story. It's not only a matter of institutional capacity per se, it's a matter also of the policy orientation of the managing authorities. And we see that you can find regions with low institutional capacity, but with the right policymakers that have the right vision and that can design the most appropriate strategy for that region. Instead, we also find, conversely, regions with good quality, institutional quality in principle, as we often measure it, but still, for some reason, they were far too ambitious or far too prudent. And this is in contrast, in fact, with optimality as we would expect it. So it's a matter of institutional capacity, and of course, you can try to improve it, especially in the prioritization approach, in the design of this, on the direction of these structural transformation strategies. But it's really also about engaging in a content discussion with the managing authority about their vision for the future, the actual risk that they are willing to take against their possible rewards. So I would say it's a more complex and broader topic.
Okay, I know it comes to round Q&A, but the purpose of the conference was to interact over lunch and everything. So if I may, I will leave the last questions for the corridor discussions and pass on the floor to our next speaker, Zorna Aranca from Alster Foundation Economics here. So.
Okay, this is a type of, how to say, scientific exercise, and it was published recently in one Information Society journal. What we done in this paper, we present the result of mapping of thematic priority areas. It's a small amount of data in comparison to the colleagues from Britain and from the Italy, but I will present why these data are very, very important in case of thematic priority areas. In Croatia, there are 5 thematic priority areas, and one of them is energy and environment sustainability. And in case of the scientific sector in Croatia, smart specialization began in 2016. It was very important because I think there are more than 15 programs which were suitable for Croatian scientists. And before that, this similar program didn't exist. And I strongly believe that using the structure fund was very important why Croatia achieved gross expenditure research development 1.05 at the moment, and in times of 2016 it was around 0.75, 76. So it's huge increase in terms of gross expenditure research development. And the scientific sector is very, very important in terms of using structural funds because there are a similar number of programs for the science sector in Croatia and a similar number of programs for the business sector. So you can imagine as a two hands, right, and left. But as a researcher, I'm interested too in which way this stronger use of structural funds and other project influence on scientific excellence of these people. So we needed to make some type of indicator which make connection between their scientific production and their participation on the various funds. And of course, you are in low institutional countries, and when you are in countries like Croatia, you lost very, very important extent of time in collecting data, not in the analysis of data. So this is great institutional constraints, but as experienced research, I created, I think, around 10 different data sets, so it wasn't problem from my point of view. What we've done, we analyze research output, structure, dynamics, research product, research commercialization, innovation, and collaboration activities. And we have, of course, this was a part of the project, so we have some time. We have some type of terms of reference what we need to collect it, and this is three types of information. First one, general information about research or institution. Second one, about information about the scientific excellence, and last one, other information. So we needed to to choose research strategy. So we choose to collect on the individual level because if you have a small amount of people, it's the best way to pick it up individually, pick it up all these data sets. And another issues was concentration of the researcher. You will see the first results. 60% of all these people are arrived from the data. This is the second reason we have a very small area of environment. So as you can see from these sources, a lot of data regular, and we need to pick it up. We need to use it in the survey, and there's some small extent data available from the experts from the ministries. So we collected all these data and created three types of I would say the three types of analysis which I will show later. But before show this result of analysis, I think it's very important how to sample data. So we create 6 strata by using 2 criteria using software, and 2 main criteria was whether the researcher was appointed by the institution as an expert in this thematic priority area. Why this is very important? Because you have 2 logical problems in case of affiliation of researchers to thematic priority areas. One that people avoid to fill your questionnaire. So he said, okay, I'm part of the project, but I'm not part of this thematic priority areas. I'm ICT expert, I'm an expert in some other fields. And another issues about the sampling and collecting data, guys and girls will tell you, okay, this is not my job. So we need an appointment by the manager, by the Ministry of Science. We include him in sometimes invitation letter, and so we requested to appoint him by the institution. In that case, you have a strong obligation that the survey will be picked up. After that, we was very surprised because more than 1,000 people appeared in this data sets. So we needed, so it was a practical problem. We cannot send 1,000 surveys in an institution. So that was the reason why we did sampling, and because the researchers are concentrated in several faculties, faculty of techniques, faculty of machinery. So around 200 people, you cannot send 200 questionnaire in one faculty because they were very upset. And they said to you, who this guy will send to us? And this is a balance, so you can tell you everything. But I think that we were very successful because we collected 253 researchers, and among them we collected 185 researchers who affiliated themselves as researchers who participate in thematic priority areas. Each thematic priority area is divided into 2 sub-thematic areas, one much more closer to engineering, and then the second one much more closer to the environmental studies. So these issues are very important because it's talk a lot of about which programs, which project researcher divided by different field of science will appear, and a lot of talk which institution will invest in terms of different type of the programs. So regarding the question, we have seven areas, and hope these areas very relevant. But the main things what we are trying to achieve: collect data, scientific excellence with participation of the project. So the key indicators what we achieved, what we presented and that in this research was utilization of EU fund, utilization of fund, fostering science industry linkage, research grants, collaboration, innovation, output, and most of them are collected online survey and checked, of course, from other sources, especially base of scientific excellence. Further, but what is the practical problem about integration? About smart specialization implementation? You have different type of collecting data, and you have here number of the project, majority of them from structural funds, but you will find that they have some type of different information, and these collection of data need to be standardized if you have some type of efficient policy. So this is very important. And this is a clarification from the previous papers. And if we jump just to the result, you can see good things in terms of using EU programs. These EU programs very important in terms of structural funds here in Croatia, because title, for example, from framework program 7 will appear in the structural funds. That's so I think this is very important findings in terms of this research. And blue one means it's not finished, and red one is finished. But when we go to the utilization of EU funds, and okay, this is very simple, and utilization and slide. No. This is a collaboration, then just that is all. Maybe I skipped something, but in terms of utilization of these funds, you can this slide disappeared in some way. But the problem is that the majority of structural funds have not finished for the scientific institution, and very few papers talk about efficiency of smart specialization, but and the efficiency and results of this smart specialization. But what would like to say, you have a very practical problem, because new strategy appear, but another side you can see that all one is not finished. So in some way it will be problem in the future who will implement all this project. But what we done in this online surveys, you can see that we divided all researchers, which I mentioned earlier, in two groups. One much more connected with engineering, and the last one, and the second one much more connected with the environmental. And you can see some differences in the using, and it's very important which topics will, for example, appear in this structural fund. If you insist much more on commercialization programs in between smart specialization, this group will be stronger. If you insist much more on programs related to the ecology, this group will be stronger. And this choice of the program is very important in terms of scientific sector, because each scientist cannot appear on the different type of the project. Of course, very important issues is how to say, how large is program, because in case if you have a large program, you have large projects and you need much more competencies. But another side, it could be very tricky for the analysis because huge grants needs much more competencies. And as you know, smart specialization have some type of horizontal expertise which is needed for each project. In case of Croatia is a key enabler technology and information society technology experts. So in each project you will find some people who, for example, dealing with the ICT or dealing with the photonics. Similar issues appear in terms of innovation commercialization. I think it's very important relation between the publication and all these issues, because a lot of things like participation on the project appear as a result. People want to produce much more papers. In smaller extent, innovation output and commercialization appear. But I would like to say that these differences are not too huge, and you can go further. But what we done last year in this analysis, we tried to make distinction here. Okay, I need more. Distinction among the researcher in terms of Web of Science, in terms of publication scopus, number of grants, and we produced 2 factors, and after factors we used and carried out the cluster analysis and produced 3 groups of researchers, and we named these guys as excellent, project focused in the research with less collaboration. This part of analysis is very important, because you can imagine what is, how to say, path of these people, on which way they create a scientific excellence or scientific path in their careers. If we accept the result of this analysis, we can see that the project is very important to achieving the excellence, and much more result, which is not possible to be presented here, show that appearance of all these projects very important for their future collaboration, for their future research works. So what we achieved in this research, we achieved that we made connection between public scientific organization and the participation of public scientific organization with various projects and research results by researchers within these institutions. We identify areas with highest concentration research groups and excellence. And we construct, I think this is most important things, construct a database of research-related performance and activities between observed thematic priority areas. The last one slide. And much more important what you do with this result of the mapping, because mapping as topic is not how to say sustainable in case if you cannot monitoring, if you cannot foresight and other exercise. So we think that in Croatia we need some type of enable training of research and the institution with numerical identifier, and there are examples with ORCID, for example, and for another personal identification. But I think that this existence of unique identifier enabled faster formation of database of research and their activities related to the S3 creation, smart specialization creation. Why? We heard before my presentation from a lady from Milano about research about organization, but everyone who deal with these topics in Croatia and similar countries thinks that these people are not representable these topics are not good. There is sometimes worries about all this process. That was the reason why I asked you about the discovery process. But in this way, you can much more precise information about experts and much more results about data experiments. Further research include the creation of Butler's square list model, where we try to make connection between the publication of researcher and the impact and activities, and I believe that we will produce some good insights, good results in 2023. Thank you.
Minutes for questions, if anybody would like to start. Otherwise, I have a question. So thanks. I think it's very important. We had the first presentation where we were looking at the universities, but now we're looking at the more micro level gaps in the sensors within the institutions. So it kind of connects all of the papers very nicely. But I was thinking, so what I would like, the type of question I would like to know the answer for would be how the researchers who participate in smart specialization projects, how they mobilize or they produce more knowledge or circulate more knowledge more than otherwise. Yeah, so I would, a comparison with people who are not in the projects. But of course, you can say, okay, selection. So ideally, you want some sort of substance variation, different, whatever. But the question would be, like, do these people or do the projects mobilize these people to produce more knowledge and to commercialize more knowledge, or apply more knowledge in general? Yeah. So whether so I don't understand why you focused only on treated people who belong to treated projects, rather than in relation to.
Well, I try to follow what the literature say about it. They say in case if there's some type of the more chances to participate in the project, how to say, publication will be better. And I think that, as I said, mobilization process depends on type of the programs which appear within smart specialization, as I explained earlier. They expertise, for example, if you are engineers, you much more appear in the programs related to the commercialization of knowledge. If you are some type of scientist which deal with photonics or some type of enabling technology, much more chance to participate in some type of the larger project, and I think much more related to the environmental project. So I think answer on your question can go in two areas. First area, which way these programs are created. In that case, I think very, very important thematic priority areas as a bodies, because they are in communication with the national bodies, and they try to create framework which much more connected to day interested. And another issues, I think what I would like to say, motivation of the people of the faculties, because these faculties which were analyzed are engineering, and they are under fierce competition with the private companies, and they cannot offer money to their assistant like private companies. So they are, I would like to say that they are squeezed between using these funds and competition from the companies. And another way, but what is interesting in case in Croatia is the appearing of COVID, when you can observe very strong decline of number of publication, which can be Web of Science publication, Scopus publication. I think that everything go good in terms of story, participation project, and participation on Web of Science articles until 2000. I think then it was really decline. But as I'm a researcher, I will try to make this collection much more exactly, but I'm trying to give you explanation next year much better than I can now. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions between the questions and the plans? So, okay, I think we've gone on time. Fantastic sharing, I think, and fantastic presentations. The whole
Just to say sorry to the audience because I have a few similar presentations and I didn't recognize which slides are in this presentation. That was the reason why I mentioned EU funds and this slide didn't appear. So really sorry about that.
It's go. No worries. Thanks to all and enjoy the rest of the conference.